Is Shell there? You start recording. Shell, are you there?
Yeah, I'm recording.
Okay, we'll start recording from now and just now start from new one, like from now, because now we're entering CME. Dr. Joseph, the mic is yours, and come start with the title and we go from there.
Okay. Okay. So I have an exciting topic. Well, at least it's exciting to me, about this substance called Acemannan. And I've come across it, but at first look, it just sounded like anything else. Okay, it modulates the immune system, yada, yada, yada. But does it work? That's the other question. And then I had a big, huge epiphany, and then that led to many other things. And then I realized that this concept in general is actually opens up the door to other understanding of other things that may help us with whatever's coming at us, whether it's bird flu, whether it's immunodeficiency. I mean, what do you do about immunodeficiency? If you don't know what your CD4 count is, then you don't know where you stand. And is there something that we can do about it? But there's many other things that I found with this. And believe it or not, I really only started my research on Saturday. So it's only been a couple of days. And I have a good understanding of it, but some of the things I'm going to talk about are just going to be things that are going to open up the door, and that may lead to more findings or take us down another pathway that will lead to more exciting things. And the purpose is to, well, I don't know how you see things. I see this whole thing that we are a part of right now as a game of survival. Okay, so everything that I'm doing is trying to figure out what we can do for what's happening to us right now, and what do we do for things that are coming, and how can we have maybe all the good stuff, hopefully. I don't like the idea of 25 different things, 5 great things that will protect us, improve, give us an advantage, and to be able to take things to the next level, and be able to affect, all of these things that are coming at us. So just an overview, just so you understand, Acemannan actually is derived from aloe. I've come across aloe quite a bit in general, even growing up. Oh yeah, aloe, it's in the skin product, and it was aloe. Oh, it's soothing for the gut, and yeah, great. I mean, sounds like a cool thing. But there is something in its cellular wall, and with the right species, it's a highly acetylated polysaccharide. Now, the other thing is, what I didn't understand is polysaccharides are actually, they do a lot. They're actually basically cell signaling molecules. You could see them that way. In fact, they are, when you think about long chained, I would say we would call them, I'm not sure if you would call, actually, I can't think of the word, but you have polysaccharides, you have polypeptides, and you have polynucleotides. I mean, those are like three major classes, and polynucleotides, well, that makes up the DNA, okay? And you've got microRNA, and that's a cell signaling molecule. You've got polypeptides, I mean, peptides, proteins. And then we've got polysaccharides, which are derived from mostly from plants, but can also come from bacteria. But they're very powerful. In fact, they're a lot more powerful than I ever imagined. So I want to kind of go into it, shed some light on it, really illuminate aloe vera in general. It's a lot more than meets the eye, and mention its therapeutic purposes, what can we do specifically with it clinically? So just to get a picture of what the molecule kind of looks like, I would look up at the upper left-hand part of the screen is really what I'm looking at here. And basically a polysaccharide is really just a linear, it's a linear molecule that has, well, at least in this case, it has these acetyl groups in a really good product. It's going to be every fourth mannose molecule. Okay, and that's where the name comes from, because it's a sugar molecule that is connecting with sugar molecules connected to each other, but the sugar is actually mannose. And it's interesting because I was like, well, what is mannose? Well, mannose is also derived from mannitol. That sounds familiar, but the root word is actually manna. And ironically, the aloe vera plant, its origins, I would say it's prevalent in North Africa, in Arabia, and it's been used all around the Mediterranean. That's where it's primarily located. It makes you wonder if you think of manna, and you think of there was a time when the Israelites were in the desert, and they survived off of manna. Was it breadcrumbs coming from the sky, or did aloe allow them to survive because it has so many different medicinal properties? The other thing to know is that think of acetylated as the opposite of methylated, because that's a really big concept, if you can see that. And that's why I got excited too, because I was like, Acemannan, acetyl. And Acemannan, a really good product, is highly acetylated. Number one, apparently it makes it very hydrophilic, and that's what allows it to go all the places and interact, say, with viruses, and it can interact with our DNA. Okay. And what could it do to our DNA? Guess what? It can acetylate it. Acetylation, in simple terms, is the opposite of methylation. And by the way, when they measure our age based on how methylated our epigenetics are, when epigenetics are methylated, those genes are closed up and inactive, and that's not good. And that also happens in cancer, especially when oncogenes are turned off. They're methylated, or there's certain or you could say some genes are hypermethylated, say like in psoriasis. And is it possible that you're actually anti-aging when you're using this substance, because it's turning on genes that have been turned off? And of course, aloe vera is special. The plant is special because it can withstand very harsh conditions, and because this holds on to water so well, it's able to, it has a high stress tolerance. So we talked a little bit about the chemical structure already. I kind of got to some of the good part already. And we talked about it having a hydrophilic nature. Again, this hydrophilic nature, from what I understand so far, is that that's what allows it to interact within the body and affect things the way it does. And the other thing is that when it's highly acetylated, by the way, it also it's a heavy molecule. Okay, it's a heavy molecule that actually has relevance, and it's highly charged when it's heavy, and it has a lot of those acetyl groups that gives it a lot of electrostatic attraction. And you'll see why that's important. And then explanation of the glycosidic bonds and its structure. Yeah, we'll get more into that. So this is the best. This is the best Acemannan to have, where you have every fourth mannose has this group, and actually there should be like a CH3 where this double, next to this double bonded oxygen. This is galactose down here. I don't think that has a huge importance. It may have some relevance in serving as a prebiotic for the good bacteria that leads to the production of small chain fatty acids, which we should probably start lecturing on, because that's a big deal too, especially for dementia, and knowing that these things again are immunomodulatory cellular signals. And when our microbiome is out of balance, which most likely it is, then we need to think of, what's our strategy. We need to have targeted strategies for gut health. Perhaps Acemannan covers a lot of territory, and can be included as a prebiotic. Wound healing and tissue regeneration. Acemannan's influence on a bone marrow stem cell proliferation and growth factor expression. Basically, it's doing this through immunomodulation of macrophages, dendritic cells, and lymphocytes. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, because it actually upregulates them. Okay, so when we think about how to protect ourselves, what's missing, and how do we protect ourselves against the next bug or that's coming at us? They talk about GMAF or macrophage activating factor being something that's important. Well, this actually upregulates macrophages and monocytes. Now, the literature talks about it's doing this in the spleen, because the spleen actually is where most of the innate and the adaptive immune system is. but it's also upregulating dendritic cells. That's what's calling upon the Th1 response to viruses. And it upregulates total lymphocyte count. Okay, so if you're concerned about lymphopenia, then it might be a good idea to realize that this is something that could potentially increase your total lymphocyte count, because that's the name of the game. And like I said before, EMF decreases that, and understanding that COVID is basically HIV, and it makes those CD4, what it does is it makes those CD4 cells very easy to trigger apoptosis in. If they get stressed a little bit, then they undergo apoptosis. That's my understanding of it. And so we want to have optimal macrophage activation, and a higher total lymphocyte count equals, most likely in my opinion, it equals a lesser risk of death. And it does this by upregulating interferon alpha and interleukin-1, just to give you the mechanism. And it does that by interacting with, I believe it's toll-like receptor 2. And a lot of things happen after upregulating macrophages. I was actually, it was very interesting to find out that upregulating macrophages also leads to other things like bone remodeling and healing, and lots of things. And the other thing, just so that you realize it upregulates hematopoiesis in general. So it's stimulating the bone marrow to produce more cells, leading to more higher immunity. Its role in osteoblast differentiation, basically what I just said: stimulation of bone marrow stromal cell proliferation, differentiation into osteoblasts, and extracellular matrix synthesis. It's upregulating DNA synthesis, VEGF, vascular endothelial growth factor, BMP2. It's also upregulating alkaline phosphatase and osteopontin. Well, there's a speeding up of osteoporosis. So I think that this is important. And I'll show you, actually, I've got a picture showing actually what it can do for dental, dental healing. A couple other things, I just had something written down here. One of the articles mentioned a study that they did with mice, and they measured radiation-induced mortality of mice, treating them 1 week prior to treatment, or treating them 7 days post-radiation, or not treating them at all, giving them Acemannan. And the mortality was reduced by 60% in the mice that were treated before the radiation, and then there was a 20% decrease mortality if they were treated 7-day post-radiation. Well, that kind of struck me, because talk about radiation. Well, that's what's happening to us. We're being irradiated, and it's wreaking havoc on our immune system. And this is not a secret in the literature. This is obvious. So this is showing that Acemannan may potentially help buffer the effects of, say, radio frequency. And not directly, but it points in that direction. And of course, the ones that were treated before the radiation, they had the highest mortality. So think about how much exposure you've had. You might not want to be the 7 days or 70 days after or 7 years after exposure mouse. Okay. So here's an example of what it can do for, this is actually just basic wound healing. There's another one I have for dental. And the big take home, without getting confused by all the different graphics, I would just focus on the left side, is that we have a basic wound. We'll just go in the middle here where we can actually see the wound and not just look at a graph. We've got our control group. We've got the Acemannan group. We've got Acemannan with rapamycin and rapamycin only. Now, the reason why this is relevant, not only to see that obviously the second group, the Acemannan group, the wound healed up much faster and better than not only the control, but with the Acemannan with the rapamycin, it's because the actions are actually the opposite of what we usually promote. And I think it's important for us to realize this, because we're usually trying to flip on AMPK to increase metabolism and for cancer protection, prevention, or to actually treat cancer or to lose weight. Everything's about AMPK. But when it comes to growth and healing and regeneration, it's all about mTOR. And think about what rapamycin does, is that it inhibits mTOR. Okay, so it's the AKT mTOR pathway that's being affected here. And if you try to do the opposite and use rapamycin, well, that just shows that it's mTOR is the pathway. Antiviral and anti-neoplastic activities. So there's evidence of Acemannan's potential to inhibit viral replication. And in all actuality, there are lots of polysaccharides that are used to block viral replication. And I'm just going to open the door on this one. It's interesting because there's an antiviral or a universal antiviral out there called Draco, DRACO, that we don't have access to. Or maybe somebody in the group does. If you do, please let us know. And just at first glance, I had to go back and look at it again. And, they're not going to tell you what it is, obviously, because then anybody can, figure it out, I guess. But immediately you realize that the O in the Draco stands for oligomizer. And I'm going to have to look deeper into it, but I just didn't have enough time. But when you think of oligomizer, most likely you're talking about an oligosaccharide. And that's pretty much what Acemannan is sort of an oligosaccharide. Now, I'm not saying it's the equivalent to Draco, but if we're trying to figure out how to treat viruses, how do we treat viruses? Yes, we have powerful tools. We have methylene blue, photodynamic therapy. Boom. I mean, that's huge. After that, when I think of what would I do, I know I'm a believer in conjugated linoleic acid, because I know it can form pi bonds, and that can tear the wall or change the configuration of probably bird flu. Okay, and that actually may just kill it, break it apart, or maybe it blocks it from entering the cell. So we've got that piece. It would be nice to have macrophage activating factor, and I think that's a subject that needs further insight as to exactly why. Ivermectin, yeah, I mean it seems to, well, we don't know. I don't know if it can help bird flu. If somebody knows that it can, I mean, certainly let me know. I think a chlorine dioxide is a great sort of kill 'em all approach. Chlorine dioxide is not chlorine. It it looks like a water molecule, and it's in the shape of a water molecule, and it's stable. And it basically exists in a gas inside of the water of your body, and it's highly toxic to all the things that we don't want, cancer cells and viruses. And it like has an opposite effect on viruses. It's like a pro-oxidant. And for us, it can actually trigger regeneration. So it's enough of a pro-oxidant to trigger regeneration in us, where, or it's a redox signaler, that's another way to put it, that flips on glutathione. But for viruses, it's enough of a pro-oxidant to be damaging. But what about these polysaccharides? So polysaccharides, and I'll get into it more because there's a picture I have, but they can affect many parts of viral entry all the way down to replication. At every point, it can affect all the stages of viral entry, replication, and all the steps in between. There appears to be anti-tumor activities. I won't spend that much time with that because I didn't have time to go in deep, but it seems like the things that affect pathogens, they also affect cancer. And it's my belief that they're intimately related, and that either cancer cells are being manipulated by the pathogens, or they are, or really the pathogen is the cancer, or they take on the characteristics of the cancer, or maybe the virus is manipulating the human cell and turning it into a cancer. So that could be part of its mechanism. It is an antifungal, but the mechanism that I found, at least so far, is that its mechanism is based on immune system upregulation and its effects on macrophages, and maybe because it's inducing macrophages. Now, what I don't think is happening is that it's triggering a massive inflammation, and it may be because it is upregulating something that is downregulated and making it more normal, or it's being balanced out because it's making the microbiome anti-inflammatory, because it's acting as a prebiotic for good bacteria, causing the good bacteria to release anti-inflammatory small chain fatty acids. but I kind of see things in terms of it's upregulating a downregulated system. So here's what I was talking about. And actually, this picture shows how the virus is affected. Now, this is by different polysaccharides, okay? And it may be that Acemannan affects viruses by more mechanisms than what's stated here, but it does have, because of its acetyl groups, I did see evidence that having lots of acetyl groups makes it highly charged and increases its electrostatic interaction. And it's because viruses use glycoproteins for everything, for entry into the cell, for transcription, or actually, I would say as it's being folded into it, the various parts are folding together and being put together in the endoplasmic reticulum and the Golgi apparatus. Glycoproteins are required for all of its transitions. And that's what these polysaccharides, in particular acemannan, binds to. It acetylates. It is actually acetylates and which may cause a conformational change in the viral glycoprotein matrix so that it's unable to bind to the receptor it's trying to bind to. And you can kind of see here that other places, inhibition of penetration, inhibition of uncoding, inhibition of replication, inhibition of transcription, inhibition of translation. And again, it may be that all of those steps, the virus relies on its glycoproteins, and it's these interactions with polysaccharides. And there's different polysaccharides out there, but with acemannan, it's all about acetylation, and then also that it modulates the immune response, enhancing the activity. Oh, it does enhance the activity of natural killer cells. Okay, that could be part of its anti-cancer property, enhancing the T cells and the macrophages, and inducing the synthesis of interferon, as I had mentioned earlier. Clinical applications. Well, it's actually FDA approved. Acemannan is for certain uses in wound care. And think about it, it makes sense because it's all about growth and stimulating regeneration and activating mTOR. And that's what's required when you're trying to heal a skin ulcer. Its emerging role in dentistry, tissue engineering. There was an article where they actually turn it into sort of a gel, and are able to help enhance the healing of non-healing root canals. And that's a big deal, because think about it, you have something that's regenerating, but you also have something, and also stimulating macrophages, which is stimulating the osteogenesis. But at the same time, that's another, when you think of root canals, that's another reservoir for pathogens. And people can have chronic issues just from having chronic pathogens within their root canal. And of course, there's evidence that that's a major contributor to atherosclerosis and heart attack, because they can find those pathogens in the atherosclerotic wall, and maybe the part of the process that, of course, is never talked about much. Potential applications in integrative medicine. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're talking about, you know, for addressing atherogenesis. Okay. Obviously, immune dysfunction, malignancy. Now, it might be that Acemannan is available somehow, or maybe we can make it into an injectable, because there were studies where it's injected. Or it may be that we can figure out how to do it with, if you have a powdered form, that it can be made mixed with a solution with sterile technique and be safe for injection use. I don't know how to do that, but that was mentioned. Other things I came across, obviously, cutaneous healing, systemic conditions. They didn't really go into detail, at least with that, but and I found some, it keeps going. I mean, the more you look, the more I looked, I saw that an article that just drinking aloe juice reduced the symptoms of EMF sensitivity. I came across another article that having aloe plants in your place can help block some of the EMF. It absorbs it. And speaking of absorption, a lecture that I'm going to try and put together is going to be about shielding and shielding against EMF. Okay, otherwise you're just a sitting duck. I mean, if you want to sit there and get exposed all the time and wait till you're having symptoms, and then you go, oh, now I know what you're talking about. I think eventually it's inevitable that everybody's going to eventually be victim to it. Now, I actually think that now most of the issues are coming from EMF. It's like the perfect combination. If you want, you first, you have a pathogen or a virus, or first you break down the immune system. Then you throw a pathogen in there, okay? Well, that pathogen is going to work, especially a virus, if your immune system is down and you have elevated levels of oxidative stress. Your ability to protect yourself is extremely diminished. Or number two, you have spike protein clustered in a certain part of the body. Well, everything needs a spark. And that spark could be the EMF, or especially you have a decreased immune system, boom, and you have all those spike proteins clustered into one area, and it's like, boom, turbo cancer. Or you have people that have strokes or heart attacks in their sleep. Think about it. Is it possible that you're being microwaved that night and you don't know it? I'm suggesting that you consider it, or I guarantee you, if you look for it, you'll find it. So, again, are you going to be a sitting duck, or are you going to do something about it? Are you going to age 10, 20 years over the next year? That's what this does. And so it's just a matter of time. So, okay, this person gets knocked out, that person gets knocked out. Oh, they get knocked out. It's always somebody else. And then all of a sudden it's you. I know, I'm just It sounds so lovely. Okay, so here's the showing just the radiographs of a non-healing root canal trying to get the bone to regenerate. And this is the control up top, obviously, and the length of time. I can't see it because I've got this thing covering it up. But you can see here clearly the control group. You can still see that the even with more time, there's still holes in the bone. With 5 milligrams of Acemannan, I believe in this situation it was made into a sort of like a gel or a paste, and you've got better healing. At least the holes are filling in. But you look at 10 milligrams of Acemannan, and you can see a completed bone matrix. So here, I mean, it's natural. This is an all natural, very potent. I mean, I don't even think there's you could make something, a drug could do better than this. Dosage guidelines. Basically, my understanding is that you build yourself up slowly. I actually have I've been testing Acemannan out, and it makes sense. You probably want to do it for a certain amount of time to boost up regeneration, boost up your immune system, and then maybe back off. Because, at the same time, if you're inflamed, you're also trying to modulate inflammation, and we're also trying to favor AMPK. But if you're immunodeficient, certainly you want to dose yourself up to a certain point, and then maybe take a break. I'm not saying that that's the rule, but I suspect that might be one way to go about it. If you did too much all at the same time, it may trigger inflammation. And at the same time, too, you're giving your gut microbiome a chance to rebuild itself and balance itself out, because it's going to have perhaps bad effects on bad bacteria, and while the other good bacteria are overgrowing and using and producing all those very valuable small chain fatty acids. Importance of product quality, adherence to health advice. I mean, this is common sense. Just know that product quality matters. You want a highly acetylated product. That would be the mark. And again, some of these mechanisms, they didn't really go into it much, but my question is this acetylating the genes? Is it turning on tumor suppressor genes that are being turned off? There's an article I came across, scientific article, published the whole thing, that showed that EMF exposure causes methylation of our genes. That's called aging. Or you could call it gene silencing. That's the process of aging, is the turning off of genes. And of course, it gets even better, and I'll get to that. Pharmacological profile, comprehensive list of Acemannan's bioactivities, its diverse applications across medical and industrial fields. Summary of pharmacological studies. Overview of ongoing studies exploring Acemannan's full potential. There's tons of them. Discussion for the need of precise dosage. We just talked about it. And of course, there's a future. I think right now it's kind of a behind the scenes thing. And you're very lucky if you never heard of this to have me talk about this, because this is probably more esoteric. It's not obvious. There's a lot of products out there, aloe products, but if you don't have the the magic one, okay, and you don't have the magic highly acetylated one that's very heavy, okay, these are important things, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So here's sort of like a summary of all the cool things it does. We'll just go around maybe like from 12 o'clock clockwise. Anti-tumor effect does this by upregulating interleukin-1, TNF-alpha, and NK cells. We know that. And it acts like activation or macrophage activating factor. It triggers bone tissue regeneration through different mechanisms. It could be through upregulation of genetic expression, and it may have to do with macrophage activation. Macrophage activation is involved in activating of the osteoblasts. Soft tissue regeneration, again, we talked about AKT, mTOR expression, and you do need some inflammation pathways when it comes to regeneration. And then now we're at 6 o'clock, we've got dental tissue regeneration. Again, it stimulates bone production, and it, with this anti-pathogen effect, makes it a great candidate. Antiviral effect, they even show it being injected, and maybe that's the way to go about it, especially if you have acute infection. Maybe it's injected, maybe it's given IV. I think that's something that we can explore. And again, remember that it acetylates the virus. The viruses it's all about glycoproteins. That's the thing that if you can disrupt the glycoproteins, well, that's the common denominator. And so how strong of an electrostatic charge it has is important, because it will change the configuration of those molecules, because they'll be attracted to them, because those are glycoproteins, and this is polysaccharides, or those are made of sugar, and those acetyl groups are highly attracted to it. It's almost like acetylation is doing everything we want for the most part, and it's more complex. And what I'm not saying is don't get that confused with methyl B12 and methylfolate and those methylated pathways. Now, we need those pathways. That's different. That's outside of the nucleus. When it comes to methylation of the DNA, hypermethylation or overmethylation is aging. That's turning off the genes. And of course, it's back to its immunoregulatory effect. Oh, and even talking about stimulating the macrophages to increase the nitric oxide production. I mean, nitric oxide is something that's like its own supplement. Well, this does that. Conclusion, recap. I think this is a real winner. I think it's something to look at. I don't have, there is a product out there. I don't represent, I don't have any connection to, I've got no financial arrangement with. I've seen them in supplement pill-like form, but I personally have a powdered form. It's kind of nice. You can put it in smoothies. You can put it in water. And they recommend that you shake it up and drink it. And it's like twice a day. At least when you start with once a day and then it's twice a day, then it's from 1 scoop to, to 2 scoops. And yeah, I think it's good to have professional consultation because I think you got to do it right. We got to know like how much, do we take to get the results. I mean, these things, it'd be nice to measure these things. That would be ideal. And I just want to again, I want to come back to this concept of acetylation versus methylation. This is what I'm talking about. It's all about turning on the genes. They're turned on when they're unraveled. This right up top, that's what's happening to us with EMF exposure. It's silencing genes. That's aging. That's what they measure when you do the DNA tests. Acetylation is basically the opposite. I think for our purposes now, see it as the opposite. Realize it can affect diseases like psoriasis. Why? Because there's a good chance that psoriasis is a hypermethylation condition of a specific part of the epigenetic code, and that leads to hyperpolarization of Th17 through microRNA 21. So, if you're trying to anti-age and be healthy, I'm thinking a piece of the puzzle is, does what you're doing, is it turning back on those genes? Or is it keeping those genes from being turned off by EMF? Or is it turning, think about this. Even neoplastins, if you look at neoplastins, they were used by a physician who got in trouble, of course, for helping people with cancer, because he was harvesting these neoplastins from the urine. Well, guess what neoplastins do? They're just more specific for specific tumor suppressor genes to acetylate them and turn them back on. Because that seems to be the name of the game with cancer. It's about those suppressed tumor suppressor genes. And just to throw in something for, we talked about amlexinox some time ago, which is also has huge relevance because it addresses nonsense mutations. And apparently there are a lot of tumor suppressor genes that are, when they do those tests and somebody shows up positive for BRCA or those certain cancer genes that seem popular, and then they think that they need to have a breast removed because it's inevitable that they're going to get cancer. But they didn't realize, maybe according to fungal bionics, that it's a mycotoxin that caused it, and that they could, if they know that, then they realize it's not like they just have the genes and that's it, that there may be something that can be done about it, and perhaps the gene can be acetylated and turned back on. And that takes me to the next level. This is the final level. This is kind of cool because when I first learned that there was something called time dilation, relativistic time dilation, and the context was actually, it had to do more, it was based on a Clotho lecture. And in this context, the concept came up because they were able to use they found out as they were trying to make an Alzheimer's vaccine that a highly charged chondroitin sulfate, heavy, very heavy molecule, triggered acetylation, and that it was turning back on genes that were silenced. And what they found is that it increased relativistic time dilation. Now, no matter how it was explained, no matter how many times I listened to it, it didn't make any sense to me. I just couldn't wrap my head around it until a couple days ago, actually. And what I realized, and I'm just going to throw it out there to consider this, basically the concept is this, that when you're close to high density, meaning the closer you are to this Earth, which is a very high density, time dilates in a sense. Time goes slower. It's a little bit counterintuitive because you would, but then they start talking about, well, if you travel at the speed of light or you go up in space, and that's where I would just get confused. But in the context of a heavy molecule with a high electrostatic charge to the histones, okay, that's where it binds. It binds to histones. Same with Acemannan, that density causes time to dilate at the DNA level. Of course, that didn't make any sense to me either. Well, consider this. When you were younger, did summers not seem like they lasted a long time? Everybody will say yes to this. Everybody knows this. When we get older, does it seem like time flies? Okay. Or I can give you my experience, since, dealing with EMF and, screaming about it for 4 years and, saying, look, this is not post-COVID. This is not just COVID here. Something's happening. Well, now we know that the genes are becoming methylated and the genes are closing up. They're being silenced. And if you look at your genetic age, it goes up. It can go up it's freaky. It'll go up by 10 years or even more. You just have to check. Well, the other thing I realized is that the days seem to pass by faster. I was moving very, very slow, and I couldn't speed myself up. No amount of coffee could do anything about it. I was lucky if any kind of stimulant would help speed things up, maybe made me feel a little bit better. But in general, I move slow. And I wasn't always like that. And I've heard it from enough people that it takes them longer to get ready in the morning. And they just can't figure it out. It might be because they got microwaved at night and then it turns off their genes and, suppresses their genes. And well, guess what? Is it possible that time is moving faster than you are? It's you. It's your genes that are turned off. Because if you've ever had the experience that I had, first of all, it was looking at a clock and looking at the seconds hands and realized it seemed like the second hands were moving very fast. That's creepy. And then affecting that, and suddenly I'm doing things effortlessly. Little things are not difficult. I go to the store and I see that everybody's moving slower than me. Everybody seems like they're moving slower. I mean, really think about that. are people moving slower and they don't realize it. And part of the name of the game is not only to make sure that, you know, our youthful genes aren't turned off and we don't have tumor suppressor genes that are turned off and we're not aging at an accelerated rate. But what if we're actually at the same time we're dilating time at the DNA level, and the experience of it is that you're getting things done and you're doing it effortlessly while everybody else is moving slow and kind of blowing off all this stuff because they're too tired to get into it and look into it. They're too tired to do anything about what's going on. I get it, because there's nothing you can do. You can't willpower. So maybe the name of the game is to turn on those silenced genes, and that's going to dilate time, and your experience and your ability to do things will come effortlessly. And that will give us the biggest advantage. So that's what I got. I hope that was interesting. Any questions?
Dr. James,
Yes.
Dr. Clatts here.
Hi.
You sound like a crazy man. And
I'm comfortable with that now.
would be the first to sign you in for observation, except that I have exactly the same experience. And so I guess I'm crazy too. I wonder if anybody else online has been having similar experiences. But there's something going on. There's something normal. And I think that we have to fight. We have to fight tooth and nail to avoid the normalization tendency. Because as physicians, forget as physicians, just as people, we want to normalize things. We want things to go back to normal. And we keep thinking that they will, but they're not. Things are changing, and things are changing drastically. And I think that we especially need to recognize that and need to support each other if we have any knowledge thereof. So I just wanted to say that before someone else called up, protective services and sent someone over to your home.
Yeah, I know it's far out there, and I tell you, I have been thinking about this, but I tell you, once you get it, and you get some of these concepts straight, it makes sense. And if you can experience it, now I did it with a clotho injection. Okay, that's my little secret, and it was really weird. You have to look at a clock, look at the seconds hands, especially when you're thinking that you're just, oh, I'm just I don't know, I'm just relaxing. Actually, there was a funny Instagram, somebody sent an Instagram thing around, and it was this guy saying, you're getting old when you don't want to, it's this guy, he's kind of funny. He's like, you don't want to go out to the clubs, with your friends, and you just want to stay in, or you go to the whatever, to the store, and you sit in the parking lot and contemplate for 30 minutes whether you want to go in. It was hilarious. But the reality is I'm looking at it and going, you know what? No. Yeah, you could just say, yeah, you're just getting old. Or you could say, no, something's happening to you. Something is actually happening to you. And if you don't, you got to either see it or you don't. Me, you couldn't, call protective services. I'm telling you that the EMF is slowing you down. That's why nobody's doing anything about anything. They're just going with the flow, trying to act like they're normal. I'm here to just say, no, look, I struggle, and I found it took a lot of, maybe I'm one of those early, whatever pigeons, or I forget what you call them, but there were others before who were having issues, whether they were chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia. They were the first ones, and nobody understood them. And they will say, I have felt tired for 20 years. I'm here to say, yeah, well, they had EMF back then too. And they had chronic infections. And I'm telling you that genes were turned off. Well, so if somebody wanted to jump in there real quick.
Yeah, Dr. Joseph, I actually do. Can you go back like 2 slides
Sure.
to that big slide? And on the top, it had the chemical periodic table structure. One more. One more, I guess. There it is right there. Okay, so you got the Acemannan right there.
Yeah.
And you notice how you have the OH and then you have the H2CO. I looked a lot of these up and they were hydroxide, hydrogen, and holmium. And it seems like this has something to do with oxygen. And if you think about quote unquote spirituality and God putting aloe vera in the middle of the desert, you would need some oxygen. You know, in the middle of the heat, you would need some oxygen for the blood. And it seems like there's something going on here with oxygen in this whole process that's part of the healing recovery and that I think we need, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I can't tell you specifically that these hydroxyl groups, I know that they buffer free radicals. Okay. That's why I understand, but you just touched on something because I derived a lot of my learning based on my learning on Clotho, which is a protein that the longest lived animal on the planet has produces throughout its life. And it produces it because its epigenetics are turned on. Its genes are not silenced, and it's because their microbiome produces a heavy disaccharide that binds or acetylates the histone, opens up those genes, and that right there might be the name of the game. But the irony of the situation is that they live underground. This is in South Africa, the desert mole rat, and they require little to no oxygen.
It is. Amen.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I'll tell you one thing. Yeah, many times I have felt like I just don't get enough oxygen. And like
yeah.
Right? So that's also that's a big thing to realize. And maybe that's part of it. And think about it and consider things like that. Acemannan, the root word is manna. And this is where this grows. And yes, is it possible that it healed wounds? It was an antibiotic. It helped their flora. It helped them heal. Turned on their genes. Buffered them against the sun, the radiation from the sun, and perhaps decrease their requirement for oxygen.
You know,
And water, because it's very hydrophilic, very hydrophilic. It may have kept them hydrated.
agree. You know, Dr. Lewis just had on a webinar earlier this morning, and it was about the company PNOE. And PNOE measures your breathing in and out, and they give you parameters, kind of like labs do. And it was a pretty huge webinar, and it's pretty ironic that this is happening the same day. So I have a feeling that this is why Wim Hof got so popular, and he showed how powerful breathing is, because we were talking about meters that measure, breathing in and breathing out. And they said, and I don't remember Dr. Lewis's article, but he said one of the major indicators of living long was your breathing. So I think we're onto something here. I think this is, bigger than what I really thought it would be. And I'm just pretty grateful for the class, to be honest. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, no, thanks. And you just reminded me, because I didn't get into it. I couldn't believe it. I came
Right.
across an article literally where they used aloe in the process of shielding. Like it was part of when you're shielding against EMF, you're using you're layering different metals together. And part of the process is to put a layer in between two copper layers and an absorbent. Okay, because
Now, real
and
quick, real quick on what you just said, in between two copper. Now think about cells. Think about shielding in between two cells. Dr. Mercola got onto this for a while, and he talked about that too. He talked about how to shield the cells via EMF, exactly what you're trying to say. And there's certain ways to do this, and I'm still working on that myself, just like you are. But there's ways to shield our cells without shungite. Just saying, and
I know. I was going to say something. I was going to make a joke earlier. I didn't want you, but we've had the shungite joke. Shungite doesn't do shit. I mean, but
you can't,
it
looks like it's like, I can't remember the name. It was a metabolic process of blocking. I think it was blocking something that can shield the cell from absorbing so much radiation and frequencies. So
now, is it inside the body or outside the body?
Inside the body, yes. God's no joke. It's like we have an inherent metabolic process to help shield our cells, but it depends on, I think, magnesium and a couple other supplements that can help to keep you stabilized in that certain process, so that you block these frequencies and radiation. It's the same. It's the same thing with iodine. That's why I think iodine with Stephen Hartman got pretty intense. And now that Dr. Lewis is pretty on to the iodine too, because it blocks the radiation. And so I think there's something between the iodine and between these cells and between the magnesium and probably vitamin D and the sun that's dealing with everything you're talking about. And because it's ironic that you think about aloe vera being in the middle of the desert. I'm just saying.
Okay, like I said, they're about to pick me up and take me to the crazy house, I think.
Amen.
But the reality is, I couldn't believe there was an article showing, I'm talking about shielding on the outside, where they're using, where aloe was a part of the shielding process that was being mixed with the other metals as an absorbent. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Really? I mean, that's crazy. And that aloe vera actually protected mice against irradiation. I mean, it's like weird. If you're looking for this stuff, I swear you'll see it. It's like a car that you didn't ever notice. It's there. It's talked about. I mean, it's not in your face talked about, but it's like, oh yeah, irradiation, blah blah. I'm like, huh? But yeah, and people who ate aloe vera juice or drank aloe vera juice had less. I forget what the actual results were. They had less EMF effects.
And people eat it too. People actually eat it also. There's no doubt. Yeah. They cook with it. Yeah.
So like I said, I'm trying to narrow things down to cover all of the big issues, so that we're not lost in the sauce of all these different things and not knowing what to do. Should we do this or do that, or 25 different things, and have big concepts. And yeah, the shielding part we've got to learn, because I realize that that's more complex than, again, you have to, the common person will say, yeah, you just get the silver mesh on, on Amazon. It's like, and I'll say that doesn't do shit. Excuse my French. That doesn't touch what's happening. That might, that's cute. And for somebody who has maybe very minimal symptoms, but the reality is you're being broken down and broken down and broken constantly. You can't get away from it. It's everywhere. You cannot get away from it. And so when I looked into this, I realized shielding is a lot more complex than I thought. And you have to layer things, and there's certain metals are better on the inside, or certain metals are better on the outside, and copper needs to be layered, and you want an absorbent. And so it's an entire field of knowledge that can be tapped into, that if you little by little, you start piecing it together, you're not going to learn it overnight, and you make a little practice of trying to improve your shielding, you'll realize that you'll have an advantage. And that's where I come from. I come from I'm not going to sit here and be asleep and just, because I'm too tired, or I've just succumbed to the EM. It's like I'm sitting there paralyzed, but my brain is still contemplating what the hell is going on, and how to get out of this paralysis. That's what goes on in my head. And to me, again, it's about survival. And really, it's about giving yourself a fighting chance. Otherwise, you're just leaving it up to chance. And well, that's not me. So I guess they can pick me up. Anybody else?
Yeah, I want to contribute a couple things because, I suffer from it too. Not, in my own way, but, we were talking about shield strengthening, and then I kind of discovered that the 5G transceivers, because I think they both transmit and receive, I got to look into that, but they're multi-frequency. Okay. And so we're talking about electromagnetic radiation, or EMF, right? And are we looking at oxygen depletion or mitochondrial optimization or mitochondrial depletion? Okay. And then, is the radiation destructive immediately, or is there a cumulative effect? And, so we gotta, think, we want to optimize our oxygen, in our cellular environment. Okay. So it also gives me, where I visualize, they take a model where they experiment on animals with programmed frequency models. In other words, they say, well, where can we cause the most effect by alternating frequencies or strengthening them or weakening them? Why do they turn up the transmitters at night? And we got to see why are they changing the frequencies. And the one thing when you talk about you feel like you're slowed down, is you think things are done in your brain. So the brain, the mind is way ahead of the body. So did I put this in the dishwasher, or did I forget to put it in the dishwasher? And you think you put it in, but you didn't do it. You thought you did something in your mind, but the body didn't follow up and didn't do it.
That's a great thing. Yeah, like losing keys, like it's frustrating. If you're losing those are the signs.
So the brain is ahead of the body, and they need to be synchronized in real time, because the brain transcends and goes beyond time, and you think it's done and you never did. Did I pick this up off the floor? Did I forget to do this chore in the morning and task in the house, and I left it and I didn't do it? And you see that later and you say, oh my God, what did I do wrong? So yeah, there's definitely some effects. I think there's a constellation of effects that we're just learning about and exploring.
Yeah.
And it's not fun. When you hear crickets in your head at night, click, 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 and you're saying, well, is it my router? Is it the neighbor's router? Is it the antenna nearby? How close is it? Where is it? You don't know. And you got to discover it. So
And-
we're learning about it. But I'm saying someone experimented this long ago.
Oh, yeah, yeah, you have to in some ways appreciate the technology and realize how advanced it is. You have to imagine that it's AI generated. You have-
And where do they build and sell cell phone blockers? Out of Shenzhen, out of China. I said,
Interesting.
why are they making a manufacturing business out of selling cell phone blockers? And then you see some with like, 12, 18 antennas, and each antenna is for a different frequency. And that makes you think, what kind of capabilities do these devices have?
Exactly. And the way I see it, even if you don't hear crickets, something is changing in you that you're trying to figure out what it is, and you can't quite put your finger on it. Now, I have patients who don't believe me. They're like, they'll confide that their libido is down.
Yeah.
But they can't.
I mean, I like to sleep
can't-
in the PEMF field.
Agree.
Well,
Hey, do you
headphones.
guys, do I have am I muted? Okay. Do you guys know when artificial intelligence was created in the United States?
Probably a long time ago.
1956.
Oh, with Eliza.
Isn't that crazy? So that just gives you an idea of how advanced they are, and they know where they're going. They know what they're doing. And I always try to tell people, the government's 50 years ahead of us. So if you think about that health wise, it's like, wow, what are we missing?
Well, somebody mentioned something to a patient, because I have a patient who claims he saw a UFO, and I believe him. But
Right.
he said something interesting, because we were kind of on to this subject, and he said, it's funny, because anybody who's ever had a UFO experience, they forget certain parts of it, or they've been abducted and they didn't realize it. And if you just get rid of the idea that UFOs are little green aliens and stuff, and realize that they're much like us.
Amen. Amen.
Right? That whole thing, they can just freeze your brain and you can't remember anything.
Maybe they like to come down to hear the CMEs.
Patrick,
I like to laugh with. That's why I like to laugh with them. You say, look, it's good. It's good. I'm not gonna. I just want to feel good for a little while. That's all. I just want to. I just want to be. I'm not bothering you guys. But I will laugh. I'll laugh with them a little bit. Like, man, you guys are something, man. God,
Patrick Bet David just did an interview with Stephen Greer. I think it was a few hours long, and it was pretty intense. And he's supposedly one of the leading authorities, kind of next to Billy Carson. And he thinks 50 to 70% of the UFOs are made from America and possibly Russia, maybe China. They're pretty advanced too. So he thinks it's 50-50. You've got the 50% of them up there and 50% of us down here. So it's kind of hard to differentiate between the two, just saying. But I mean, just think about artificial intelligence coming out in 1956, and we never really thought about it until just the recent couple of years. It's kind of crazy. It just blows my mind.
Joel, maybe drones can evolve into UFOs.
Don't even get me started on the military. Just saying.
Yeah.
Hey, Joel, I think we have to, before we worry too much about artificial intelligence, we got to try to fix natural stupidity.
Amen. Agree.
Yeah. And that's why my focus has been now. I mean, we've done lots of interesting lectures, but I'm trying to ring it in to to the moment and where we're at right now and what we need to do next as a game of survival. Look, I just want to feel good for as long as we have. Okay. And I'm okay with that. You know, and we can have fun doing this, you know, but you know, that's where my thoughts go. And my, you know, anytime I'm thinking about something to talk about, it's the next discovery of things that can, you know, that can restore some of those things that you're losing, whether you realize it or not. Not you, Joel, specifically, you get it. And then, you know, shielding and, you know, just want to have a quality of life. Look, AI is following you everywhere. It knows everything you're doing. You probably want to follow the rules, you know, it knows, you know, just right. Don't think you can outsmart it and outsmart advanced technology. Forget about it. You know, it was around long before you, and those who have it, you know, what's going to happen is going to happen. And then maybe, just maybe we get lucky. Okay. But, you know, I'm trying to keep us from getting lost in the sauce and getting complacent and, you know, slowing down, because it's hard when you're in that state. You can't willpower yourself to do anything about it. But when you have a few major tools and you start to recognize when you're able to snap out of it and you're affecting your, you know, whether you're buffering the redox, you know, a lot of these things also will turn on those silence genes. But also having some direct tools to turn on silence genes, and you start to recognize that you're moving faster and thinking faster. You know, that's a powerful thing, you know, and it's kind of cool to think that you can dilate time, you know. It's like, I mean, for me, but that's what time dilation means to me, is that you are slowing down time in which you're actually more like a kid, where you get to experience things for longer, or doing things you can do more, go here, do this errand, and you're doing it effortlessly. When that's the way it should be in a sense, because that's how it feels when you're younger. But when you're slowing down, you don't realize how much you're slowing down, and if you just think, oh, I'm getting older, think about this stuff and think about, what if that's all being dictated by these frequencies, and your behaviors are being manipulated by these frequencies, and they're very sophisticated, and you're stuck in it. And you know, but we have, there's tools out there and little secrets that we can flip our genes back on and start regaining have some control over this. So that's really what I'm about. Unless there's anything else, I think, I don't know, I had fun. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I got a
Secret?
quick comment. When you're talking about aloe vera and all that kind of stuff and taking aloe vera, I know that a lot of the supplements out there and a lot of the aloe vera liquids and all that stuff just taste like crap. There is a product, I don't know if you mentioned it or you're familiar with it, called George's, which is an aloe vera water liquid, which is phenomenal stuff. George's, and it's not expensive. You can go to like Whole Foods or wherever some of these vitamin places upscale, and you can buy it by the gallon.
Okay.
And it's a good thing, I think, to generally take. And I will tell you what, if you have an upset stomach or anything, that's the first thing I go to. Have a swig of aloe vera. I put it in my dog's water. It is phenomenal stuff. Now, what you said is way beyond, I think, what any of us thought that this did. Right? This is like a miracle type of stuff based on what you're saying.
Yeah, no, this is inside knowledge that I think.
So yeah, it's worth taking. It's worth drinking that.
No, okay, real quick question. Speaking of Whole Foods, I just got this for myself and Dad. It's called Lily of the Desert, since 1971, preservative-free aloe vera juice. but you got inner fillet and whole leaf. So does anybody know the difference between the two?
Well, the whole leaf would probably have more acemannan, because that it's in this, you know, you're going to get more of those polysaccharides, and
Right.
and you know, it's not just acemannan. There's other polysaccharides that are doing their thing. Acemannan is just kind of like the ace, when you think about it, top of the line. But you know,
I kind of figured.
I like the secret sauce. You know, if something's too popular, I get a little bit suspicious. But I do like the idea if it's kind of like you wouldn't know about it, but it's really only at this store, or it's maybe only at, you know, even if it's Whole Foods, it's probably you didn't notice it before, but there's more. You got to start. You got to start somewhere, and you know, but I always keep an eye out for the stuff behind the curtains. You
Right.
know, the one that is harder to find.
Yeah.
But
I'll
you
look
got,
for George's for sure.
yeah, start with something. That's what I'd like to do, is just start, you know, like you said, start with George's, you know, swig it, you know, you probably could drink it like water for a while and see how you feel. And also have that, I like knowing why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if this is sort of buffering, another layer of buffering for my cells, okay, and I know that maybe it's contributing to activating the, you know, my hematopoietic system, or stimulating hematopoiesis. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, literally, that's part of the name of the game, is to activate your bone marrow. But certainly if you go straight for the acemannan, I mean, that's top of the line. I don't think we're recorded, so
We are
Yeah.
recording still. I can turn
okay.
around.
Okay, so yeah, just know that there are not all acemannan is created equal. Okay, and that rule applies to, you know, essentially all of the products that we deal with.
I want to ask Bob Quinn, Dr. Quinn, are there any CBD fractions that would be synergistic with acemannan? Oh yeah, you're muted. You're muted.
Oh, are people muted?
Yeah,
No,
sorry.
you're good.
The way that molecule works is like it's adaptogenic. So it's going to either inhibit or enhance natural cellular processes. We're just lucky that that thing exists. So no matter what you take, so if you have a situation where you have too many EMFs and your body is reacting to it, it'll start to buffer that or enhance any kind of a detox type of thing. Everything that we talk about, Shell, and using the CBD is going to be beneficial in either an additive or a synergistic fashion. Put it that way.
Would it also be proper to say that it provides homeostasis? That's what I've heard.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
It's homeostasis for the
Yeah,
whole body.
Joel, yeah, that's 100%. And you know, I mean, hey, the ancients knew that the Chinese are big about this, right? Is
Right.
homeostatic balance. Everything in the body is balanced. You have acid-base balance, right? Electrolyte balance. Everything is balance. And there aren't too many things out there like the cannabis plant that can balance so many systems in the body. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. Like the 12 systems, right? Respiratory system, you know, central nervous system, all of these things, it just balances it. Now, it doesn't basically add things to you like drugs do, right? They'll add chemicals. This is more or less a modulation toward balance on virtually everything. And that's why people get so many positive effects with so many different conditions. Like I would say, whether you got irritable bowel syndrome or menstrual cramps, right? We're talking balance through everything. And so to answer Shell's question, yeah, no, I know it's going to be beneficial, but can we say synergistic? I don't know. that's beyond what I think anybody
There's
knows.
room for exploration.
Well, yeah, and
Oh,
Dr.
yeah.
Block, my understanding from Dr. Block is that it's sort of like the master regulator of all master regulators.
It is. Yeah.
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 And it depends, it
They
depends on
refer to it
the,
that way.
it depends on the CBD, CBDG, CBDA, CBDN, CBD. So that's
yeah.
where we're in the research process of trying to learn,
Right.
what sleep, what helps us be energized, what helps with.
Joel, that you're 100% correct. If you look at it, we don't want to get into a big discussion on that, but there's over
Right.
120 various cannabinoids. You mentioned CBG. CBG is the plant's precursor to both CBD and THC. It's CBG first. Now we have a lot of CBG dominant cultivars out there that people are finding for various uses. The
Right.
big thing is going to be when we can say, here's a cultivar that helps with pain more so than this one that helps with sleep, because we got all these different combinations. There's a ton of research being done. Apparently, it's the most researched topic in the world right now because of the variety of effects. And it's all based on what you just said, percentages of what they call the minor cannabinoids, CBN, and all of that stuff.
Wow. Wow. Amen.
Yeah,
A lot
so,
there.
yeah, no, it's great to have these tools and understand them better and know, just knowing that you have something that you can do something about this. I can't even imagine that not knowing, not doing anything. I mean, it's